r/legal advice. Chloe says, mother dying of cancer giving custody of my siblings to entirely unfit man in her will. Gonna cut straight to the chase here. My 23 female, mother 43 female, has stage 4 cancer and is going to put it in her will that my siblings, 14F and 12 meters, will go to her deadbeat, brand new, husband who is 10 years younger than her and only 10 years older than me, that she married in a shotgun wedding after her cancer diagnosis. He is filthy, violent, can't go an hour without smoking weed, and completely irresponsible. He doesn't have a job and does freelance dog training. He doesn't do shit for her or my siblings and has no kids of his own. When my mom dies he's likely going to cut me and our entirely family off from my siblings. My sister is autistic and he has zero patience with her and snaps at her constantly and yells at her until she has meltdowns. This is her third husband and all of them have been pieces of shit. How do I contest her will to make sure my siblings don't go in his care? Edit, I'm 23F. This is how stating age works on Reddit and has worked forever. Stating the age after the person. I.E. My equals I23 female, S mother 43 female. I'm leaving it the way that it is because that's how it works. Redditosa1211 says, children in the United States aren't left in a will like property. When the time comes you can engage in the court case where the court decides what to do with your siblings. There's nothing to do while your mother is alive. She's entitled to her will as she specifies it. When she passes you should speak with a lawyer. Fuzzy Pay 480 says, now what the above person said this is going to be the case. Children aren't property and can't be bequeathed in a will. Your mom can assign who she would like to be in charge of your siblings to, but they will not automatically go to her new husband unless he has adopted them. Is their father still alive? Typically custody would go to him unless he's no longer alive or his rights were terminated by a court, very rare. You can look into hiring a family law attorney, but you won't be able to do anything until your mother passes. Are you willing and able to take responsibility of your siblings? Pokinono says, the children's father would be considered next of kin point if he is dead or unable to care for children. The courts usually will investigate if another relative can be guardian to the minor children. It can be a grandparent, cousin, uncle, etc. You also could apply to be guardian of your siblings. A step-parent is not likely to be appointed guardian, regardless of your mother's wishes, unless it would be considered in the children's best interest. Edit, missing word and typo. Throwaway 07051985 says, now but a legal assistant specializing in family law for almost 8 years now. I suggest you speak with a family lawyer as soon as possible, don't wait for your mom to pass. If he's treating your sister like this while she's still alive and she allows it, that's a huge red flag. I'm not from the same area as you, but here you can include a clause in the will saying who you want to have guardianship of minor children after your death, but it's not a guarantee that he would still have to apply to the courts for legal guardianship. If you can start proceedings now, based on his actions do so. If not, report his behavior to something the CPS and have them look into it. If they investigate it, like they should, then, if it's anything like the system where I am, he would have to file a criminal record check and a child abuse registry check as a part of the court proceedings. If you've reported him, that should show up in that will. Heighten the chances of him not getting guardianship of your siblings. You may not get guardianship, but someone else has a higher chance if there's a black mark on his record. r/legal advice. Competitive Alps 871 says, would this be legal to have a sign on my front door due to receiving so many neighbors' packages by mistake indicating her name, living next door? A bit of backstory, because sometimes people seem to ask questions if you just state as little as possible. Last summer, I reported the neighbor lady next door for burning garbage many times. The way she did it broke many ordinances, plus she burned garbage often. When she first moved in, my elderly father was living with me, with breathing issues, copped, he was on oxygen, multiple heart conditions. She knew all of this, but she didn't care. She would use a tree stump as the burn base, which is right next to the property line, smoke always drifting towards our house points. Then, maybe not surprising, I've been on her crap list. She receives packages from FedEx, etc. almost daily. Sometimes more than one delivery truck daily. So I guess maybe not surprising, some of these packages have been delivered to my front porch by mistake. I saw her outside this past autumn, to let her know one of her packages was on my front door, and she was not nice about it at all. Acting as though it was my fault. Granted, it was the first time I spoke to her, since she got cited for her burn fest. Whatever. Same thing happened last weekend. Horrible snow and ice storm. I have never called her before, but I called her to let her know one of her packages was on my front porch again. Again she was quite rude. So I'm over trying to help her with her packages. I've tried calling FedEx, and it never seems to pan out. Besides, these are not my packages, Imhoshi is the one that should be calling FedEx, etc. I've also walked several of her packages over to her front door, so this is a recurring problem. Something it seems that for whatever reason, she's not doing anything about. And yes, she always does have her correct address on these packages. So I realize it's the delivery company's fault, but obviously she's done nothing to rectify the situation. Anyway, pointer. Couple people said I should put a sign on the front door, saying something like, Ceci Smith does not live here, she lives next door. Please deliver her packages to her, thank you. Now, I'm wondering if this is legal to do so, plus I'm willing to bet it possibly will ruffle her feathers, but whatever. She has not shown any consideration to me since she moved in 2.5 years ago, for many reasons. But I'm just wondering if this is legal? Side note, I do get some packages delivered to my house, not near the volume she does, so I kind of don't want to tick off FedEx, etc. Drivers over this point, Anne. I feel like a sign like this might annoy them more. Vintager Rose 20 says, you're assuming that the drivers will actually take the time to read the note. If they aren't careful enough to read the package label and deliver it to the correct house, why would they read the note on your door? Competitive Alps 871 says, very true. B0424 says, stop calling her and going over to drop off her packages. Just mark them as return to sender and send the packages back. The Canterbury says, I'm not sure what you would expect her to do to rectify the situation, but no, there's no legal issue with you doing this. Aharatoidalize says, that sign might piss off the delivery drivers with the caps and exclamation points, lol, I'd just tell them to return it to sender. It's not your package. Impril59 says, not a lawyer, but also not sure why you would think it might be illegal to put a note on your own door. Delivery drivers don't care what name is on the package, and that info just becomes background noise. If you want to do a note, then I'd put one that says this isn't her address, as they might notice that, but it would probably be better to make your proper house number more noticeable. There's really nothing she could do about this legally. She could call and complain, and that complaint might actually even make it to the driver that made the mistake, then they'll be moved to another route and things are right back the way they were. Hopefully you both, need to figure out why it is that multiple people are confusing her house with yours and resolve that situation. Jill says, putting a sign on your house should be legal barring any local codes or hosts. I would leave them outside, mark them as being delivered incorrectly, then call the shipper to have them sent back to sender or delivered. Maliciously petty and legal to not receive mail meant for another person. Maybe stop interacting with the neighbor for her benefit. Ricking Screw says, now, you are in legal means of putting up the sign. I do not understand why the FedEx delivery person continues to do this. You called them, and they didn't do anything. This is the driver's fault. Put up the sign regardless how hurtful it can be for the driver. They can start feeling better by delivering it to your neighbor correctly. I have to have this sign out for this specific reason, and it has stopped. We have a lot of different signs for these where they direct the drivers on where to put packages, or tell them to actually deliver package to correct address. r/legal advice. Macaroon26 says, neighbors are threatening to sue over parking on the street. I live in an Hoa neighborhood that has very little room, and most of the time you can fit at most 2 cars into your driveway if you're on your grass. So people very frequently park on the side of the road, and this can be seen on every street. But the issue is this: my daughter just started driving and has her own vehicle, a 2001 Chevy Silverado, which is not the prettiest, but she keeps it up as best as she can and has no visible trash or anything like that. It's just an old truck. There's a strip of road that has only one house on the opposite side which she and various other people park their vehicles on, but they've just left a note on her car saying if she specifically parks there or anywhere, including our driveway, they will take legal action, claiming it's an eyesore and brings down the community's looks. What can I do? We don't have any room in our garage to park a vehicle and are just at a loss. Superman08 says, check your Hoa documents and any local ordinances for how long a vehicle can be parked, what state of repair it needs to be in. Usually if it's drivable and getting moved on a regular basis it shouldn't be an issue, but it will vary. You may want to consider some type of dash cam with a motion sensor that will record if the neighbors decide to mess with the truck after their legal threats don't work. Jeffrey Wolfang says, most statutes I've seen only stipulate that a car parked on a public street must be registered, and sometimes there's a time limit. If she's actively driving it, there should be no problem, unless the Hoa has a rule against it. Cubic J says, and on a public street city laws take precedent. A Hoa tried to enforce some rules, but because the roads had been turned over to the county, they couldn't do anything. Zerxa Spoon says, ignore them. I can't think of any legal theory under which they could sue you or her for parking a car legally. Now maybe the Hoa will decide to create a rule about this, but that's between you guys and the Hoa. Unusual at 342 says, does the Hoa or the town/city own the road? If the gov owns it, it's legally parked, and if they tow it, report the car stolen and she them. If the Hoa in fact owns and maintains the road, you could be forced to give her driveway parking. But even then your CCRs probably cannot be enforced on a legal vehicle. Ike Now Few Things says, unless the property line stretches to the street, extremely unlikely, you can just ignore them. The local AHJ and Hoa have authority, and unless there is something specific in Municode, very unlikely, or an Hoa rule, there isn't much they can do. They can complain all day long, but being an eyesore isn't illegal when that eyesore isn't on anyone's property. Spinner Off Ion says, check your Hoa and city laws about how long you can park on the street without moving it. As long as your tags are current, it's not in a parking prohibited area, and it moves at whatever interval required, you should be fine. I have only heard of vehicles affecting property values when it's something like multiple dead vehicles sitting in the yard and vehicles that obviously don't run being left on the street. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.